Morning everyone, I'm Michael. I'm going to be your presenter for this morning's session. This is part one of the VAT return. Part two will be running, as it says on the slide there, we're running that at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. So you might be familiar with the VAT return wizard. It's split into a number of tabs. So today we're looking at the first two tabs of that wizard. Obviously you've got some slides I'll be sharing during the session. I'll be distinguishing between UK VAT returns and Irish VAT returns as well. So you'll see there's not a great deal of difference. Yes, there's different number of boxes on the returns as we run through that, but you'll see the screenshots. I will be primarily working in a UK return today because that's where the majority of you will be from. Right, okay, before we get stuck in though, I'll just quickly share the housekeeping slide with you, just for those of you that may be new to webinars. So you don't need a microphone for these sessions. If you do have one, you will find it's muted automatically. Your screen may look a little bit different today. I think we're using the new interface, so it will look a little bit different to what we've got on the slide there, I think. But there should be an opportunity to download the handouts and also an opportunity to submit questions as well. So it should be via, I think, like a web page interface today. If it's any different for you, let me know how you get on. Let me know what you think about the new interface. Now, as normal, the session is being recorded. Links to the recording will be included on your follow-up email. You'll receive that around about an hour after we finish. And that email will also include a link so you can register for upcoming webinars. So you haven't yet registered for the VAT return part two, or maybe you're thinking, well, I'll attend part one and see how we get on. And you think, I'll give part two a go as well. Then the link will be included on that follow-up email so you can get yourself registered. There'll also be a link to our recordings page as well. So if there's any other topics you'd like to see, so if you're looking for maybe something to do over the Christmas period, maybe it's a little bit quieter in your office, maybe not, then you will have those available if you want them. So over 100 recordings available on that page. Right, okay, let's have a quick look at what we're covering in today's session then. So I'm going to start with a brief introduction. I also want to quickly mention Sage 50 Accounts version 33, which has actually just been released. We've got some webinars that we're running on those on that version at the moment as well. Next one will now be in January, so do come along for one of those. But then we're just going to get stuck into the demonstration itself for the VAT return. And then right at the end, I'll explain more about the additional support and also pick up on any outstanding questions. Keep your questions coming. We're joined today by Abby and Laura. They'll be in the background to try and support you and answer any questions that you might have. Before we do that though, I'm going to pop a poll on your screen. So let me just find that. I will pop that poll on your screen now. So quick question for you. Which return do you generate? Is it a UK return? Is it a Irish return, or do you do both? If you don't mind, get involved and choose an option. We'll see what answers we get today. Just give that a few more seconds for the results to come through. Great, okay, loads of you voted there, so I'll just end that poll and I'll quickly share the results with you as well, so you can see that. Right, so we got 81% of you voting for a UK return and 6 of you, or 6 of you, or 19% of you voting for an Irish return. We don't have many of you on the session today. We got about 37 of you logged onto the session this morning, so quite a small session for what we normally run. Right, okay. Let's just get back and I'll make sure I share my screen. So already got it shared. Right, okay, so we'll move on. What I wanted to do, I wanted to run that poll for a quick reason, and it's just to mention a little bit about version 33. Now, nobody voted today. We normally get some people that do vote for that, probably accountants normally, who would say, right, I actually do both. So for the purpose of the recording, I'm just going to cover this anyway, just in case anyone comes back to watch this recording that couldn't attend this morning. So prior to version 33 coming out, and I've included a link on the slide there. If you get into our help center and just go into the installation area, you'll be able to access the download link for version 33, and there'll be information about it as well. But one of the changes that we've introduced in version 33 is that your software will check if your company is in Ireland or the UK. It will then apply the correct currency and VAT settings. So prior to version 33, it was all about your Windows regional settings when it comes to opening Sage 50 Cloud account and which VAT return you were presented with. So that's no longer the case from version 33 onwards. So if you had, let's say you were an accountant, for instance, and you had a company that you looked after that was in Ireland and one that was in Northern Ireland, you would always have to switch your regional settings before going into the relevant company. Or quite commonly, you might even, if you've got a number of companies in that position, you might even have separate PCs. That was quite common as well. But that's no longer the case. It will just look at the country, which is attached to your address of that particular company that you're accessing, and it will display the currency and VAT settings accordingly. So if you do want to find out more, do check out the information in our help centres, or that could be quite a good time saver for you if you are in that position. But let's move on with the webinar itself. So looking at the actual VAT return. Now I mentioned I've got screenshots on these slides to differentiate between a UK VAT return process and an Irish VAT return process. Now, not a lot of difference, as you'll see as we run through them. I will keep coming back to the slides because I am going to be using a UK return today. But basically, in either, you will click access the VAT ledger, so the option on the toolbar down the left-hand side. It will take you into the VAT ledger, and you might have a few different options along the top, but you will have a VAT return option. And that's where we're going to take it from there. Right, so let's get stuck into a bit of a demonstration. Now, when you access that VAT return, I'll just show you one final screenshot before we get going. And it will open the VAT return. So you've got these three tabs along the top, these three sort of steps. So prepare your VAT return, reconcile your VAT return, and complete your VAT return. Today, in part one, we're looking at tabs 1 and 2. So running through the various tasks that you've got available on those two tabs. For tab 3, that's what we're going to be looking at in tomorrow's session. So we're looking at actually completing the VAT return. So those 3 tasks that you have available on tab 3. So it's all about tab 1 and 2 in today's session. So that's what we're going to look at. Right, I will share my screen. Give me a moment, there we go. And we'll get stuck in. Now, it's a bit of an older set of data that I'm going to be using for the purpose of today's session. So back in 2024, this set of data. But if we click the VAT option on the ledger on the left, and if you've got any VAT returns where you've reconciled previously, they're now going to be listed. If you're new to Sage, or maybe you've never done, maybe you've only just registered for VAT, then you should find it's blank. Now, these are just the essentially copies of what you've reconciled previously. So once you agree your figures and you get to the point where you click the reconcile button, it'll create a VAT return archive and it will add it to your list. And it means you can go back and look at your old VAT returns if necessary. So I can highlight that one, which just covers October 2023 to December 2023. I'll just double click it. It will bring up and I can see the details of the return, what the figures were. I can see the tasks which are associated with step 3 of the return, which ones have been done, which ones haven't. I can print reports, I can drill down into figures, etc. So I can see that. If you need a copy of your old VAT return, that's where you'll find it. Now I'll make sure I've got nothing selected. If you find that you can't do that, so as you're clicking and you're trying to remove the highlight and it's just following you sort of around that list, just click clear. So you just click clear and it'll make sure nothing's selected. You'll then go into the VAT return itself. So this launches the wizard that you saw on a screenshot a few moments ago. Now the process that we're going to follow today is pretty much the same. It doesn't matter whether you're in Ireland or UK. So it's going to be the same. So steps are the same. The only thing that's different between the two regions is the actual VAT return itself. So obviously UK return, we've got boxes 1 to 9. You've got a few extra boxes if you're based in Ireland. So step 1 or tab 1, it's got a number of tasks on here. And the first one is to take a backup. Now the reason for taking a backup, now even if you're just coming in to check your figures, sort of maybe you think, right, we're 2 months into the VAT quarter, I'll go and I'll calculate the VAT return and see where we stand currently. I would always encourage you, even if you're just doing that, take a backup. If you go through that wizard and you accidentally reconcile, so you flag your transactions to say, right, these have now been included on a VAT return, you can't undo that manually. The only way you can undo that is by restoring. So take the backup. So I'm going to quickly do that. It tells me on this set of data when the backup was last run. And it even mentions there you cannot reverse the VAT reconciliation process. So take that backup. Don't be that person that contacts our support team and says, right, I went through it and I just typed in my date range and I clicked calculate, and then on step 2 or tab 2, I clicked reconcile and I shouldn't have done that and I haven't got a backup. So you don't want to be in that position. Take your backup. Nice and easy. You click the option, you choose to back up your data files. You don't need to back up anything else just at this point in time. Now I'm just going to give it a name. Your default file name for a backup will be Sage Accounts. It'll then say whatever your company name is. So mine's just called Demo VAT Return. It'll then pick up the date in reverse order and then the time that you accessed that. And then it'll have 001 on the end. 001 on the end, significance of that. Well, if you've used computers long enough, you might remember the old floppy disks. So you would put your floppy disk in there and the file would be called .001. Well, once that disk was full with your backup, it would ask you to insert the next disk. It would be 002, 003, etc. until that backup was complete. These days, obviously, you just back up to your hard disk or you might back up to a different device. But obviously, these days, you're going to have a bit more storage than 1.4 megabytes, which you used to get on a floppy disk. So you probably only ever see 001 these days. That's the extension. Choose your location wherever you want to save that. So mine's just going to go on the desktop. I'm just going to call this one pre-VAT. So you can put whatever file name you want in there. But other than that, I'm just going to OK that. Now it does prompt you, would you like to check your data before you back up? So we normally always encourage you to do that. So we'll let it run through really quick on this set of data. It doesn't find any errors, no comments, just have some warnings there. Now, if you ever have any errors, warnings, or comments, all you need to do to find out what they are, you just click the tab on the left there. And I've got some information with regards to goods received notes, product is missing. So nothing to worry about in that case. If you're ever in that position with an error warning, a comment, and you want to find out more about it, you can expand these. But generally, it's just this wording at this stage that you need. You would click the help option, search for the detail of the error, warning, or comment. It would advise you what that is and what you need to do about that. Don't just ignore them, particularly if you've got errors. But if you're unnerved and you think, oh, I've got an error there, what should I do? Get in touch with our support team. No need to struggle with anything. That's what we're there for. Anyway, I'm just going to jump past that point. I'll close out of that check data results. The backup will then take place. Again, really quick on mine because it's a relatively tiny set of data. We've got just under 2,500 transactions. It tells me the backup has been successful, so we just OK that, and it'll return me back to the VAT return. We then come on to the date range. So this is basically asking me, right, well, what period does your VAT return, what does it need to cover? So my example, as I say, it's an older set of data that we're going to be using, but I'm going to be covering the VAT quarter, January 24 to March 2024. Now, it used to be many years ago, many years ago as well, that it would actually ask you for an exact date range. So you would have this sort of style of date range. And the reason we changed it to whole months by default is just so people didn't miss out when it was those like 31 days in the month. So you'd key in, up to the 30th of the month. Or you'd forget it was a leap year, and at the end of your VAT quarter, you might put the 28th of February. You don't want that. So just specify your quarter. It'll specify that date range for you at the bottom anyway. Now this little tick box here, let's try and dispel the myths of this a little bit. It's something that you probably never ever need to use. Now, no matter how I explain this, some people just won't get that. This is really there for historic purposes. Prior to this VAT return wizard being introduced, what you had a VAT ledger, and you would take your backup, and it wouldn't record it in the background. So you wouldn't have this sort of VAT ledger where you can view your old VAT returns and things like that. So if you wanted to view an old VAT return, you would come into your VAT return and you would say, right, well, I want to view the previous quarter. So you'd specify your date range, and if you just click calculate, it wouldn't find anything because all of your transactions are reconciled. So that's where this comes in, include reconcile transactions. So because you've got the VAT return archived in the background, you should never really need to use this. So just leave it blank. You don't need to select it. I'll come back to it a little bit when we click on calculate. Next, we've got the VAT verification settings. So you're going to have 7 or 8 settings at this stage. Now I'm going to pop into them just so you can see what they are. And I will also just quickly pop back to the slides for a moment. Let's bring up the right one for you. Just so you can see the difference between the UK and Ireland at this stage. So it looks pretty much the same. The only thing that's any different is in that other potential issues area. And I'll run through these settings at the moment, what they're looking for. So you can see really it's all about the VAT rates. That's where the difference lies. Otherwise, it's the same sort of thing or the same areas where it's trying to identify potential queries. Let's head back to my screen. Right, so these are our verification options. Now the first one is to identify possible duplicate transactions. Now the reason for introducing these VAT verification settings all those years ago was to try and boost your confidence a little bit. So the feedback we used to get was, well, I've generated the VAT return, but am I feeling confident? Not really. So we've identified sort of, well, we've introduced these checks or these settings just as a way of trying to boost that confidence a little bit, trying to help you identify any potential issues before you get to the point where you submit your VAT return to HMRC or the revenue and then think, oh, I've missed out that transaction. You don't want to be in that position. So that's what these checks are for. Now, they'll all be selected by default. You can switch certain ones off if you don't want to use them. You can switch them all off if you don't want to use them. It's up to you. So the first one's going to look for possible duplicate transactions. So have you got transactions which are the same transaction type? So for instance, were you entering some payments at the time and you got interrupted and you thought, right, well, I'll pick up where I left off when I've got some time, and you've done that, and actually what you've done is you've just keyed in the same transactions again. It will try and identify that for you. Have you got any missing entries? So have you got invoices and credit notes on your invoices and credits ledger, which you've entered and you've saved, but actually you haven't updated them to the ledgers yet? If you haven't updated an invoice to the ledgers, it will not be picked up on your VAT return. It does not look at your invoices and credits list. It looks at your audit trail, your transactions list, those transactions that appear against the customers and suppliers and bank accounts and nominals. So this will actually look at the invoices and credits list and say, right, have you got any invoices within the VAT period or prior which have not yet been updated? Leave it ticked. The next one is to identify purchase orders which have been delivered but not invoiced. Now, this is the difference between having 7 checks and 8 checks. You're only going to have this check if you are on the professional level of the software. So that's why you might find, I think it's just it leaves a gap if you're on either essentials or if you're on the standard level of Sage 50 account. So only on professional would you have this one. Now, it's a bit of a 50-50 mix on this one, even when you're on the professional level. Now, this will look and try and identify any purchase orders which have been flagged as being delivered, so you've shown that stock being booked in, etc., but not invoiced. Now, if you work with purchase orders, it's quite common, and I would say it's probably a 50-50 split, this one. When you receive a delivery, you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to use the update ledgers option within purchase orders to essentially record the value of the invoice associated with that purchase order, or alternatively, you'll ignore that option and you'll go direct to suppliers and you'll just do a batch invoice. Now, if you do yours via a batch invoice, this check here is going to identify all your purchase orders as they'll have been delivered, but they will not be flagged as having been invoiced. If you do use the update ledger option within purchase orders, then this is a similar sort of check to the invoices and credits. It's going to check, right, have you received any goods, any orders that have been delivered in the relevant period, but you've not yet entered the invoice for them. Third check in this section is to identify transactions with a VAT value where the tax code is not included on the VAT return. So have you inadvertently specified a tax code that's not ticked to be included and be picked up on the VAT return? So have you used, let's say, have you entered a transaction as, let's say, T11 when it should be a T1 transaction? By default, T11 is not included on the return. T1 should be. So have you done something like that just by mistake? So again, it'll try and identify that so that you've got a chance to then correct that transaction and associate the correct tax code with it. Coming down to the other potential issues for checks in this area. First one, it will check the VAT values on transactions. So if the transaction value is 0, it's obviously going to ignore that. But where there is a value, a VAT value associated with a transaction, does it fall within the relevant rates? Now, by default, if you're in the UK, it'll be set to 21% and 18%. If you're in Ireland, it's going to be set to 24 and 21. So does that value fall somewhere between those percentages of the net value? Again, you can adjust those tolerance settings as well. You might want to reduce it even further if you want to, but those are the default settings. Next one, identify sales and purchase transactions not using your most common tax code. Now you can only specify one tax code here. By default, it'll be set to T1. So your 20%, or if you're in Ireland, the 23% transactions. Chances are you're going to be using a range of tax codes. Now, this one will identify any sales and purchase transactions not using T1. So let's just say if you're in the UK and you have a range of zero rated transactions, so you've used T0, you might have exempt transactions, T2, and a range of other tax codes that might be in use. Now, anything that isn't T1, by having this one switched on, it will identify that as a potential query. It's not saying it's wrong, it's just saying this isn't using your main tax code. And you can change that. So if you mainly operate with sort of buying and selling, and it's all to do with zero rated transactions, you can change that tax code to one of the others if required. But just be aware, this one can throw out a lot of transactions just as a query. Again, not saying it's wrong, it's just saying it doesn't use your default tax code. Next one is to identify journal transactions where the tax code is not selected as non-vatable. I always think that's like almost like a triple negative, that one. So what this is looking for is journal entries, so journal debits, journal credits that you've entered into the software, where you've used a tax code that is something other than the non-vatable tax code. The non-vatable tax code by default is T9. The majority of your journals, and there will be exceptions, but the majority of your journals will be classed as being non-vatable. So likes of salary payments, for instance, bank transfers as an example. When you put those through as a journal, they'll be classed as being non-vatable. So this should pick up your non-vatable tax code by default. So this is going to identify any journals where T9 hasn't been used. Now, as I say, there are exceptions. Not all journals will be classed as being non-vatable, but because the vast majority will, it's going to identify those that aren't. Just in case you've been a mistake. Now, the final one, not really applicable if you're in the UK anymore. Mainly just for Irish users this one, since or for the UK, since we experienced Brexit, and it's to identify possible incorrect EC transactions. Now, what this will look for is, have you got the right settings within your customer and supplier records for any EC transactions? If you haven't, so let's say you're in Ireland and you're trading with France, have you got the relevant VAT registration number in the customer supplier record? So it'll try and identify that type of thing for you. Now, as I mentioned, all of these are switched on. You can pick and choose which ones. If you're fairly new to it, I would say leave them all ticked and just okay that. So on step one, all we've really done at this point is we've taken a backup and we've specified our date range. So it's taken us a while to get to that point. Obviously, we've had a look at those settings just to run you through. Now, all we need to do is calculate VAT return. Now, when we do that, what the software is going to do, it's going to look at your VAT scheme that you set up for, and it's going to look at the VAT period you've specified, and it's going to look for transactions that are classed as being vatable under your VAT scheme that haven't yet been reconciled, that fall within your VAT period. What it will also do is it will look for any transactions prior to your VAT period that haven't yet been VAT reconciled. So are there any late entries? So did you do your last VAT return and then you thought, oh, I forgot about, I've missed that transaction out. You've had to backdate it. Don't worry, it'll pick it up next time round. Similar if you had to, maybe you had a transaction which was VAT reconciled, but you subsequently deleted it or you needed to reverse it. That correction probably will be prior to the VAT return. So it will try and identify that for you. So Rosie, you just pointed out that I forgot to change the VAT period. You get a point for that one. Thanks for that one. I get carried away. So I'll change that in a second. So what this is essentially doing is it's looking for transactions in your relevant VAT period, but also it's going to look for those that are prior to the VAT period, just in case there are any late entries. Now, when you get this, it's like an all or nothing type situation. Although you can highlight things, you've got the include or ignore. It will do either all of them that are listed, or you can ignore them. Right. I'll go back to step one. Just testing to see if anyone was watching and paying attention. Obviously, so we'll just specify that period again. We'll go through calculate. So it's found those two late entries again. So it's telling me at the top the summary. It's found 49 transactions in total, 2 of which are unreconciled and prior to the start of my VAT quarter. Do I want to include them? So these are just late entries. Now, if you had a massive number, so let's say it's found 100 transactions and it's saying, right, well, 47 of them are prior to the period and they're not reconciled. Chances are, with that being about half of my transactions, I've probably forgot to reconcile the previous period. It's not very common these days because of things like MTD, but it used to happen quite regularly where people would generate their VAT returns and then they would just manually input the figures via the website to submit their VAT return online. But these days, not as common. But if you do find that, that's probably why. Possibly situations where you've had to restore as well can bring that situation about as well. We would expect the period or the late entries to be quite a low number compared to the number of transactions that you've found. Right, so I'm going to include them. Obviously, if you wanted to, you can print that list, you can send it to Excel, and then a bit like I did, I just closed out a VAT return. You can do that. And then you can go away and, if necessary, investigate the transactions. Are they right? Are they not? Do you need to make any changes to them? You might find coming into the new year that actually you got to key in a transaction for January and you keyed in as 2025 rather than January 2026. That's quite common as well. So you might find out when you run your next VAT return, if it covers the sort of the change in year, that you might find there's a few late entries. You just process them wrong. Anyway, I'm going to include those two, and that takes me on to step 2 of the VAT return wizard. You'll see that the figures are now calculated on the right there as well. Right, okay, let's quickly run through these options then down the left-hand side. So the first one is the verification results. So there were 7 or 8 checks that we were just looking at a few minutes ago. So it's telling me I've got 4 potential queries. I'll view the results, and some of them will be just have a tick there, it's not found anything. Others, you might have this sort of amber triangle. So it's telling me I've got an invoice or credit note which is not being updated. You can view the results of these ones. So this is telling me invoice 84. I've entered it. It's got this date on, telling me basic details. Should it have been updated or not? Now, with that one being so old, I'm just going to think, oh, actually, no, I'll not do anything with that one. So was it just an invoice I entered and then we never did anything with it? And maybe we just never deleted it either. So it still exists. So I'm just going to ignore it. So again, all of these verification options, these results, they're there just to almost like increase your confidence a little bit. It tries to identify potential queries. Not saying they're wrong, just it's a potential query. Do you need to do anything about it? And again, this was the one I mentioned about the transactions not using your most commonly used tax code. So I've already got two. I can see what those are. And a little bit of detail, and I can see this one's used tax code T2, this one's T5. Not a problem. I'm just going to ignore that. So have a look through that and see if there's any changes that you need to make. If you do need to make changes, you will need to just simply close out of the VAT return, go make those changes, and then you can come through this again. Right, next we're coming on to make adjustments. Now, chances are you'll never need to use make adjustments. They're very specific. Normally they're used for things like if you on a partial exemption VAT scheme. If you're on a partial exemption VAT scheme, there are certain calculations that you will need to make, and then you will need to adjust your VAT return. And you can use the make adjustments option to do that. It might be that you've been informed by your accountant or maybe HMRC or the revenue that you've made a mistake. If you need to make an adjustment for whatever reason, depending what it is, potentially you can use this option to make a manual adjustment. And it would just be a case of you clicking in and then choosing which of the boxes you need to adjust. You would pop a reason in and your adjustment, which can be positive or negative. It's going to close out of that. So if necessary, easy to make adjustments. If you do use something like a partial exemption scheme, which you're probably going to calculate your VAT returns on spreadsheets and things like that then to work out what your adjustment should be, you can save a copy of that spreadsheet as an attachment for the VAT return. Attachments do not get submitted to the revenue or to HMRC when you do your submission, just in case you're wondering, just really there for your reference purposes. Now, the next thing is the important part is checking your figures. So you might get to this part and think, right, figures in box one or whatever, it's a bit higher than I'm expecting, a bit lower, or just in general, you might think, well, how does it calculate? Now you can analyze your figures in probably one of two ways, and it's quite a common one for a support team. You know, you get to this point and you think, well, figure in box one's a lot higher than I was expecting. Why is that? People contact our support team with queries like that all the time, as you probably expect. So you've got two options. One is to use the drill down. Now, what do I mean by drill down? Well, it's where you've got this little icon here attached to the relevant value in the box. Where you've got that, you can click it, and what it will do, it will show you the breakdown. Now, this will pick up certain transaction types depending what box you've clicked on, obviously what region you're in as well. Also, what VAT scheme you're on. So me being on the standard scheme, it's picking up invoices, credits, receipts, and journal credits. And it breaks it down by tax codes as well. Now I might look at that and think, well, sales invoices, T1, we've got £14,310. You might just look at that and think, oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that receipt or that credit that I needed to put through, and it might have value there. You might think, well, actually, I wasn't expecting that. So where does that figure come from? So any figure that's identified on this grid here, what you can do is highlight it, then double click it. And what it will do, it will load a list of the transactions that make up that specific value. So invoices at T1 in box one, here's the list of invoices in this case that contribute to that £14,310. Again, I can print that list, I can send it to Excel. And to be quite honest, that resolves a lot of the queries. It points people in the right direction when they get in touch with our support team. Go away and check that. So you can do that on any of the boxes where you've got this drill down functionality. So if I click on the figure in box 6, again, you could be thinking, well, oh, I've got a receipt, £10 at T2. Highlight it, double click it. And again, you've got that transaction breakdown. Is it right? Is it not? The other way to analyze your VAT return is via the print VAT return. You've also got reconciliation reports available within the screen as well. So people like to print everything they possibly can. Now, if you do tend to do your reports before you come into the VAT return, this is a good alternative. You would just click it and it would bring up the report browser window, and you would just expand the reconciliation reports folder, choose your VAT scheme, which will be listed, expand that one, and it will give you the various ledgers in Sage where you probably would have gone in to generate reports from. So you would have gone into bank and reports, and it will give you a list of the reports that you would have printed or produced. Similar for customers, suppliers. Obviously, those reports, what's available will differ depending on your specific VAT scheme. But as I say, some people like to print everything. Some people go the other extreme and print absolutely nothing. There's no recommendation on that one. Now, you do have the option to use the print VAT return option. When you click that, it gives you a list of the standard 6 reports. I'll just quickly run through them. You'll see one of them is grayed out. The one that's grayed out in my instance is the adjustments, and it relates to this option, the make adjustments option. And it's because I didn't actually enter an adjustment, so it's not relevant. Similarly, if those 2 transactions, the late entries that I included, if I hadn't included those, there'd be nothing to report on. So this one would be grayed out. But the ones that are there, what I'll quickly do is just quickly preview them, just so you can see them. Just okay that criteria. Just quickly let those generate. Right, let's move them around a little bit so we can see what we're after. Right, so the first one was the VAT return itself. So if you're going to print something, it's probably going to be this one, a copy of your VAT return. It's got the boxes, with it being a UK return, it's got boxes 1 through to 9, it's got the relevant values that have been calculated, it's got the VAT period that you specified, and also some stats on the transaction breakdown as well. You can get at these a little bit later on as well, if needed, even after you've reconciled. The second report is the summary report, this one. So when I drilled onto that figure in box 1, it gave me that table, transaction type by tax code. So this report will do that for each of the boxes on the VAT return. So for a UK return, it's a 7-page report. There's 7 potential boxes that I could have drilled down to view that table on. Obviously, Ireland, there's a few more. The third report was the detailed. Now, this goes all the way down to transaction level. Now, if ever you have a VAT inspection, this is the report to have. So VAT inspector, where does that figure come from? The figure in box 1, how have you calculated that? Well, here's your list. This is a list of all of those transactions that contribute to box 1. We'll list them. It's not saying the individual transactions are right. What it's saying is, right, that's the figure you've declared in box 1. That's what's being calculated. These are the transactions that contribute to that value. So it breaks it down. In this case, it's VAT box 1, sales invoices at T1. It's got that list. Now, if there were credits at T1, credits at T0, credits at T5, again, we show those as separate sections. This can be quite a lengthy report, this one. So even for my, how many was it, 49 transactions it found in total, it's a 3-page report. Again, you can generate this later on if needed. But that's the one that's got the detail on of what was used to calculate your return. And then the final one I wanted to quickly mention is the earlier unreconciled transactions. So this has got the detail of the breakdown of those 2 late entries, how they impact on the relevant boxes on the return. It's the equivalent of the detailed report that we just looked at, but for those late entries only. The other one that I will quickly mention as well is the departmental VAT report. So if you do use departments and you're quite big on that, then it will be the same as the detailed report, but grouped by department. So we'll go through each box, each sort of transaction type by tax code, and also by department. So again, this could be quite a lengthy report as well. Now, once you've checked your figures as best you can, and we've actually got a recorded webinar. I think Matt went through that one a while back. How to check your figures, what to compare with what on the VAT return. So what reports to run. So do you look at the daybook invoices report? You compare that to, what do you compare it to, etc. So we've got a recording on that one if you want a bit more advice about checking your figures. But let's say you agree your figures. You think, right, well, they're the figures. That's what's calculated in Sage. That's what I'm going to agree to. You've got the final option to reconcile your VAT return. So you would click reconcile. You're prompted, do you want to flag your transactions as a VAT reconcile? So basically those 49 transactions, do I want to tick them to say, right, we've accounted for the VAT on this. And this is the bit you can't manually reverse. So if you've just come in to have a look and you've completed this option, you've clicked that option and you've clicked yes to it, you can't manually undo that other than by restoring. So I want to tick those boxes to say, yeah, right, I want to flag them as being VAT reconciled. So I want to tick them so they're not included on future returns. So we'll click yes to that one, little progress bar. It takes me on to step 3, and that's my VAT return. Well, it's reconciled and it's complete in Sage at this point. Now, we will be looking in part 2 at these tasks down the right-hand side here. So the VAT transfer, the submissions, and the record payments. But just at step 2 at this stage, you might think, well, that's enough for me today. I'll just close out. I'll complete sort of the tasks on tab 3. I'll do that another time. So if that is the case, we've got our VAT return there that we've just literally generated. Now, you might just think, right, we're going home. We'll come back another day, do the rest. But we've got our VAT return. And if we double click it, it takes us back to that point. So we can see the figures. We can still drill down if we needed to. We get all the way down to transaction level if needed. You've got your reports available. So that detailed one I mentioned earlier, if you need it, that's how you can still get at that. You've got your verification results, whatever was identified at the time. You've got your option to view your adjustments. And you can still go in and add attachments. But these 3 tasks here, that's what we're going to be covering in part 2 of the VAT return, which is at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. So if you haven't yet registered, please get yourself registered for that. So hopefully you may have attended today and thought, well, actually I knew all of that. Great. You got a bit of reassurance. For others, where I think someone mentioned they were coming up to do their first VAT return, hopefully you're feeling a little bit more confident. It's not as complex as you think. Yeah, we've taken a little while to explain the options as we've gone through that, but I'm hoping you're feeling a lot more confident. It's logical steps. But that brings us to the end of the demos for today's session. What I'll quickly show you is that if I just go back to the slides. There we go. So when we get to step 3, or the 3rd tab of the VAT return, where you've got those tasks listed down the right-hand side, it's going to look even pretty much the same. The way that you submit is a little bit different between the UK and Ireland, but other than that, the tasks are the same. That's what we're going to be covering in tomorrow's session though. If you've got any final questions, if you want to pop those in for me, pick those up. You've still got Abby and Laura and also Matt on hand as well. So pop those questions in there. Loads of information if you need it available from our help centre. Does split it between region as well. If you've downloaded the handout, those links will work for you. The link to our webinars, our upcoming sessions, that will be included on your follow-up email, which you'll receive in round about an hour's time. So do get yourself registered for part 2 if you haven't already, and I hope to see you then. But there's recordings available. Our timetable currently runs up to the end of January. So have a look, see what interests you, get yourself registered. And then finally, just want to thank you for attending. If any final questions, pop them in there. We'll try and answer those before we disappear. But there'll be a little survey pop up as you leave today's session. If you can take a minute to complete that. So we always love reading those comments. Have we hit the mark? Have we not? Have you got any ideas, maybe topics that you'd like to see covered going forward? Sometimes it's a real struggle for us to think about those. Do you find the webinars too slow, too quick? About right? Let us know. Pop it on there. If you can do that, it'd be greatly appreciated. Your follow-up email, that will be with you in round about an hour's time. And do remember, VAT Return Part 2, tomorrow at 11. Get yourself registered if you haven't already. Any final questions? Let me see if there's any. Keith, you mentioned, are you going to get a badge? No, not for this one. We have run them in the past. So we did do the VAT badge in 2020. I was going to say last year. This year we run a badge for VAT. So looked at a number of different areas. You're not get a badge for this one. If you want to wait till you get your follow-up email though, I'm sure you could print it out and cut it on a bit of paper and stick it to your jumper. It would look great, that one. Send us a photo once you've done that one, Keith. We'd love to see what that looks like. It might be better than the badges that we issue. You never know. But let us know. Right, okay, there's no other questions, so we'll just end the session at that point. Many thanks for coming along. Take care, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow at 11. Many thanks.